Welcome to the DOM Events topic video. Our objectives are going to be to learn that the role DOM Events plays in creating graphical user interfaces. We're going to learn how to listen and stop listening for events. We're going to understand the event propagation model and see how to use that to achieve functionality that we'd like. We're going to understand and use event information in our graphical user interfaces. Here are a couple readings. The first one is from Smashing Magazine. The second one is from Mozilla. I recommend them both. The first one is a bit more complete. References. Okay. You want to know all about the different events, you look at the event reference. You want to understand the functionality, you look at the event target interface. If you want to understand the kind of information in general event, you look at the event interface. And two of my most favorite ones are mouse events and keyboard events. So what are document object model DOM events? Almost any interaction or change with or to a web page is accompanied by an event. Okay, that means every click, scroll, drag, drop, change, input, key entering, error, resize, blah, gets an event. Okay, because there are so many events generated, this allows us as Java programmers a great deal of flexibility in interacting with our users. Okay, just because events are generated doesn't mean we have to do something with them all. So where do events come from, these DOM events? They can be triggered on any part of a document, whether by a user's interaction or the browser. They don't just start and end in one place, they flow through the document. Okay, they have a life cycle of their own. Okay, and this life cycle makes events extensible and useful. Okay, what about compatibility? In the past, different browsers implemented events very differently. However, modern browsers adhere very well to the W3C standards. So we will use standard interfaces rather than a library such as jQuery, which did a great job in the past of dealing with inconsistencies across browsers. Hence, we will be dealing with what some people say using vanilla JavaScript to deal with the DOM and DOM events. That's what some people refer to this as. I would say we're just using standard JavaScript with the standard DOM interfaces and standard DOM events. So, how does this all work? As you might guess, it starts with some inheritance. Okay, why? Because the functionality for dealing with events is needed in many parts of the document object model. Hence, a separate interface known as the event target interface is implemented by any element, any HTML element on the page, okay, the document in general, and the window. Okay, the key methods, the methods we are going to use, stem all the way from this very high level interface. One is addEventListener, okay, and the other, as you might guess, is removeEventListener. This is the prime way, until we get to React much later, which uses this mechanism underneath. This is the way we will listen for events. Okay. Other mechanisms that you may see on help sites and places like that when you Google things are not recommended. I want you using the event target interface, adding event listeners and removing event listeners. This is the prime method. This is also the most general method. Okay. So how do we do this? The interface looks like follows. We get an element. We call its addEventListener method. We tell it the type of event we're listening for. That is a string, a plain string. Okay, those event references that I pointed you before have a list of all the different types of events, the strings that you would put in here. We give it a callback function, like we've learned to do with JavaScript arrays and things like that. Except in this case, this callback function will get called when the event occurs. Okay. Information containing data about the event is passed as the first argument into this callback. We have a third parameter that we're going to learn about a little bit later, about whether the callback should be fired in the capture phase or the bubbling phase, as we'll learn about a little bit later. Okay, so how does this work? Okay, so let's come up with an example. Here's a very simple HTML. H3, ID test1. This is a heading level 3, okay, an H3 element, and then we're saying click me. Response to follow. Here we have an empty paragraph, test result. Okay, so we're going to come over here to this file, open it in a new tab. So this is our example. Okay, we're going to take a look at the code and all the goody stuff inside it. Okay, so let's take a look. DOM example, blah, blah, blah. Simple click type event. Okay, simple click type event. Here we go. Test1. We're calling this test. We're saying it's a click target. Okay, and here we have a little script. Okay, so we're seeing our setup now. Let's go back. Okay, so that's the DOM. Okay, an empty paragraph, a heading that says click me. Okay, once again, look over here. Here's the, ooh, look at that. How did we do that? Is that JavaScript? No, that's just HTML. Okay, if we look at our style editor, okay, we've got the click target. Okay, on hover. Okay, so on the click target, we change the cursor to the pointer. Okay, we go from the arrow to the pointer as we go over it. And on hover, we're changing the background color. Okay, so that's how we're doing that. It's got nothing to do with anything, with the JavaScript or the events. Okay, back to inspecting. Let's take a look at the code. A lot of setup. What are we getting? Let element 1 get element by ID test1. What was test1? Test1 was our, oh, the H3. The H3 that says click me. Okay, so that's going to be our click me. Element 2 is the paragraph that has the ID test results. Okay, now I'm defining a callback function. Okay, it's not taking a parameter right now. It doesn't mean it isn't given one. I'm just not using that parameter. I let content equals test1 executed at new date. I think we brought up that when we say new date, it gives us a date object at the time it was called. Okay, so this is going to basically say test1 executed at date and time. Oh, then we take element 2 and we set its inner HTML. We learned this before on dealing with the DOM. We set its content to this string we just created. Okay, so that's our callback. The callback doesn't get run. It's just a function definition. Oh, then we add the event listener. Element 1, the thing that we're going to click on, we say add event listener. What type of event are we listening for? A click event. And we give it the callback. Okay. So let's watch what happens. Okay, so here's our test result paragraph. It doesn't even show up because it's got nothing in it. Response follows is that paragraph. Okay, and that's our test click target. So I hover over, click, boom. The test result gets filled in with a bunch of text. Test executed Monday, September 7th, blah, 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 16:44:23 in the afternoon, Pacific Standard Daylight Time. Hey, that worked. What if I click it again? What do you think will happen? Did the time get updated a little bit? Watch the seconds. Oh yeah, the seconds are getting updated here. Okay. Click it again. Okay. So we're run every time we click it, the event handler is called. What does the event handler do? Calculates a new day and updates the string content of the paragraph. Nice. Not super duper useful, but really easy to see. What did we need? We just needed the elements that we want to make clickable. So in this case, it wasn't a button or anything. It was just a heading level 3. Okay. We made it, added a little styling just to make it helpful. Okay. Then we've got another element to hold our test results. Now, what about removing an event listener? Okay. Let's look at this example. Here's test 2, class click target. Okay, so we're doing the same kind of thing. Click me. Response follows test 2 results. Looks almost exactly like our previous example. What's going on here? Okay, I get the element 3. It's got a thing I'm going to click on. Okay, here's the test result. Here's the paragraph I'm going to fill in. Callback 2. What does callback 2 do? Okay, it sets the content, new date, sets the inner HTML of the content. Whoa, what's this? Oh, after I run this the first time, I'm going to remove the event listener. Why would I do that? So they only can click it once. Really, Professor? You can do that? Uh-huh. Easy peasy. Let's try it. Okay. So where's this code? This is the code here of example 1. Removing an event listener. That's down here. Okay. Test section. We'll close up this section. Simple click type event. Now, removing an event listener. Okay, introductory paragraph. Here is our click target. Here's where the response is going to follow. And this was the script that you just saw. Okay. Let's try it. Does it work? Click. Ooh, I highlighted this one in bold. Test executed Monday, blah, blah, blah. Look at the seconds. Now, can we click it again? Oh, we can click it as many times as we want, but what's not happening? Nothing's changing here. It's at 5. It's stuck at the time we first clicked this very once. Are you saying, Professor, that all those ancient history interfaces that say don't click this button twice, you may be charged twice, are completely archaic? Yeah. We can make a button that only does its operation once. You can only have to listen once for the thing, okay? So that's the case where we removed an event listener, okay? Right after we used it, okay? Now, Professor, yes, do we have to make our example so complicated? Not really. Here's the first thing I do, okay? Let's make this heading here, the heading right here, clickable, okay? How do we do that? Okay, just from the console. I'm going to go First, we grab the element. My h1 equals document dot query selector. I'm using query selector because I just want to get one guy, the first one that we come across. And I want h1. Okay. I get the h1. Okay, so we got the h1. Now, I can go my h1. Now, I can define a callback function separately, or I can do it anonymously. So let's go my h1, add event listener with type of thing. Let's listen for a click. Now, what do we want to do on the click? Sometimes I just want to know what's going on with the click, okay, to make sure the click actually works. So what I do, I put in a function. We're not going to worry about event info yet. We'll come back and do that. Okay. So I'm going to put in a function here. All I'm going to do is say console log you clicked me. Okay. Yeah, I know that seems a little silly. Okay. But what I'm trying to do, Professor, you're not getting that cool pointer anymore, right? Down here, you got into a pointer. Here, it looks like you're going to edit text. Yep, that's all in the CSS. If I click here, look, you clicked me, okay? Professor, you keep clicking it, but you only get it printed out once. That's right, because the debugger tells us that we've had 5 repeats, okay? So it's that easy to listen for an event, okay? It could be any type of event we want, okay? My h1, well, let's knock it out. Okay, we'll do some more later. Okay, so some of these examples are maybe a little bit more complicated. That's how simple it is to add a listener to an event, okay? Now, let's look at the event object, okay? What and from where? Properties, okay? So we get information about the type of the event, the target, where did the event really come from, and the currently registered target for the event, okay? Where did it originally come from, and how are you listening for it? Huh? We'll get to that on event delegation. Okay. I think mouse events are cool because this is how you make user interfaces. When you get a mouse event, you get a bunch of different things. You find out the buttons. You can find out the buttons being pressed, the coordinates of where they were pressed. You can find out if any particular keys were pressed. Okay? So let's set up a target. Okay? So this is still in the same document, same event HTML file. So where are we going to be doing this? Let's go down to the bottom here. The event object. We'll set up down here as, let's go to the inspector. Oh, okay, we're going to close up that section. We're going to go to this last section. Okay, we're going to set up a div. We're setting up a div as a mouse target. We give it some styling and give it specific height and width. Okay. In addition, I'm going to tell it what kind of cursor and background color and all that good stuff. Okay. Doing this stuff inline just for the sake of making this a self-contained example. Okay. Now, what are we going to do with this information? Okay. I'm going to get the target, the mouse target. Okay. Now, I'm going to get the, okay, so this is for the div. This div in blue. Okay. This one is going to be for the paragraph that comes afterwards that says event info. Right now it's empty. There's nothing in it. Okay. Now, function mouse handler. So this is going to be my callback. It gets the event. It's going to actually do something with the event handler. It's going to tell me the type of event. It's going to tell me the target of the event. It's going to tell me the current target of the event, the coordinates X and Y. What's it going to do with all this stuff? This is just a nice way of creating a string. Okay, I get the stuff from the event, I put it to a string, and then I keep concatenating each of the pieces of the string. Okay, nothing tricky here, just string concatenation using the plus equals operator. Okay, then I take that fully formed string and put it into the info output inner HTML so we can then see it. Okay, and we're going to be logging the event. Okay, just so I can see it. Okay, so that is my callback function. Okay, that's what I'm going to do when the event happens. What do I need to do next? Mouse target, addListener. I use the addListener base. I tell it which type of event I want to listen for. I tell it I want to listen for mouse down. Okay, and then I tell it I give it the mouse handler. Okay, so let's see how this works now. Okay, so the script's in here. It's doing all that good stuff. Now I got to come over here. Click. What happened here? Type, mouse down, target, HTML div element, current target, object, HTML div element. No difference there. Client 233, X 233, Y 390. Let's try going way over in this corner. What happens? Oh, client X 528, Y 465. Up in this corner, client X 39, client Y 270. Professor, well, why is it? We said the width is 500 and the width and the height is 200. Why is it giving me values like this? Did the values get bigger as we come down? Yes. Okay. We have to take into account what do we mean by the client X and the client Y. Okay. And that you need to look up a little bit. Okay. Because there's offsets that get thrown in and such like that. Okay. And where does the starting point? Okay. So there's a little bit of removing offsets and things like that. Okay, and we get used to that when we do mouse events. We have to do that when we do mouse events in SVG. Okay, but once again, we find out information about these events. Okay, and we can use them. Okay, we can use them to make complicated user interfaces, games, and the like. Okay, now, what else is in that event object? There's a Boolean value, okay, indicating whether the event bubbles up through the DOM, okay. There's another one that says whether the event's cancelable, is it trusted, etc. Okay. And we've got a couple other methods in here. Prevent default, stop propagation, stop immediate propagation. Okay. Why might we want to do those things? Okay. Let's do an easy one. Okay. Prevent default. If I'm on a web page and I hit Control S, it asks me if I want to save the web page. That's what a browser does, right? If I'm writing some kind of graphical user interface, so here I've got a playlist editor, okay, and I can have a bunch of different playlists and such like that. So this is an application I wrote to help me manage my playlists. When I click Control S, I don't want to save this web page. I want to save the playlist. So I want to prevent the default behavior. I don't want them, okay? And instead, I want to receive that event, and then I'm going to do whatever type of processing I want. basically I send the playlist back to the server to be saved. The server that's running on the same machine as this graphical user interface. So that's what that one means. Now let's learn about what this propagation stuff is all about. Okay. There's two different phases, a capture phase and a target phase. Okay. The capture phase is when the event propagates through the target's ancestors. Why? From the window to the target's parents. Okay, Professor. Then there's the target phase, where the event object arrives at the event object's event target. Okay, meaning that the place that it really came from. Okay, if the event type indicates the event doesn't bubble, then it's over. Otherwise, it bubbles back up. Excuse me? Bubble phase. Here's the second phase. The event object propagates through the target's ancestors in reverse order, starting with the target's parents and ending with the window. Gee, Professor, this is obscure sounding. Yes, but actually there's a point to it. Okay. Let's look at this. Let's take a look at the image. Okay, this is from the W3C document. Okay, let's say we have within a complicated, well, tables are complicated, they have a lot of structure. We want to make something clickable. Okay, say one particular element within the table, right? Part of the table body, within the column and a row, we have a particular data element, table data. We want to make that clickable. Okay. How did things, the capture phase starts up at window? Why would it do that? Well, who actually receives mouse clicks and things like that? The operating system. The operating system feeds that to the program. What program are we running? A web browser. Okay, so things start with the web, from the operating system to giving the information to the web browser. Okay, and the web browser figures out, knows which tab we're going to be on, which is the window. The window feeds it down to the document, and what we go and do is search with the information about the DOM for the actual target. Okay, who matches up? Okay, who actually targeted? Okay, this is hit detection. Where did it actually come from? Okay, when we get all the way down and we reach the target, okay, this is called the capture phase, where we figure out who it originated. We don't, but this is part of the how graphical user interfaces work. Okay, because the original information comes way out from the operating system. So we figure out who the target is. Now, that the target phase is when we arrive on the target. Now, optionally, we can bubble back up, okay, from the target to each of the target's parents and ancestors. Why might we do that? We've got a very good reason for doing that. We'll see in a second, but let's first see if we can understand this with an example. Okay. So we have the capturing phase, where we go from the outer elements, starting with window to document to all the containers that contain the target. Okay, that's the capturing phase. When we're at the target, then okay, and after the target phase, we have the bubbling phase. Okay, so let's take a look. This is an example from MDN, but I set it up for you guys so we get, and don't worry about all the JavaScript code and stuff and the styling things. Okay, take a look at the file. Okay, open up this thing in a new tab. Okay, let me explain this. Okay, what you're seeing graphically represented here is a series of nested divs. Okay, because we want to see how this bubbling capture phase works. Okay, we have a bunch of nested divs: D1, D2, D3, D4. Okay, they're block elements. Okay, they're nested. What we do is We give them different sizes, okay, so we can see them clearly, okay. What we're going to also do is we're going to sign up in our JavaScript, okay. We're going to loop over all the divs and set it up so that they have a click listener, okay. We're going to have a function to listen for what happens to the click, and it's going to tell us where we're at, okay. All the details don't matter as much as checking this out, okay. So the first thing we're going to try doing is clicking. It says click D1, analyze the event propagation change. D1, event phase target. Sounds like we were right there. Try clicking D2, event phase. First, we hit target. Oh, and then we go because we're not using capturing. Let's try it again with capturing on. Oh, event phase. First, we start out at D1. Why not at document? We're not printing out anything on the document, okay? We're only attached event listeners to D1, D2, D3, and D4, okay? So with the capturing phase enabled, okay, we see that D1 was visited first, okay, while in capturing phase. Then we see that D2 is in the targeting phase, D2 again in targeting phase. Then we visit back to D1 in the bubbling phase, okay. What happens if we click in? Oh, look at this, down here at the bottom. Let's make it big. Okay, we see it starts from the outside in, capturing, target, then bubbling back out, okay. Even more extreme as we click D4, okay. We see the event first from our event listener on D1. It sees it in the capturing phase. Then D2 sees it outside, all the way to inside, and then back out, bubbling, okay. If we're not using capturing, which is the option that we give to the event listener, okay, we only see half of this. We only see the target out to the bubbling phase, okay. Okay, professor, this is neat. Why do I care? Okay. Sometimes we have a lot of stuff we want to listen for events on, and we don't want to necessarily handle all those events. So basically, this is the case we have too many listeners to manage. Do we need to attach a listener to every element that we want to hear events from? No, we've got bubbling, okay? We can listen on a container for stuff that's happening to the children of that container. Oh, because we have bubbling, right? We don't have to write a separate event handler for every element. Okay, we can put a listener, a handler on a container. Do we need a separate handler for every element? Yeah, wait a second. Just because we got bubbling, how we get? Oh, wait a second. No, we get event information. So we can create a more general handler that uses the information from the event. Oh, good idea, Professor. So here's an example. Okay, here's a lot of buttons. Okay, I have a section. As I usually do when I have a lot of controls I put into a section, I give it some kind of ID like controls. Okay, I have a whole mess of buttons with values attached to them. Okay. Okay. Then I have a section that I call output below, section ID output. Okay. So this looks kind of like this. Okay. A bunch of buttons. I'm not sure. Okay. Output below. Okay. So we want to be able to add text to the output based on the buttons people click. Okay, we want to be able to click here, and have text show up down in here. Okay. We may add a lot more buttons or change the words on the buttons, etc. Okay. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to write a different callback for every single button. Well, what can we do? Put a callback on the container, right? Look at this, controls. Okay, don't worry about the onload stuff. If I haven't talked about the script elements yet by the time you see this, don't worry about it. We'll explain what that's for coming up. But what we care about is this, controls, document, get element by ID, the controls. So I'm getting the container. Now, before we go too further, let's just take a look. Okay, it's easier sometimes to see this stuff. Okay, let's go take a... Okay, so here's our body. Okay, here are a lot of buttons. Okay, here's all those buttons, right? Here's all these buttons with the different things going on. Okay, here's my output below. Here's my little output-y window. Okay. Okay. So now the question is, what do we want to do? Okay. We want to be able to click on buttons and have it produce the words. Okay. What I don't want to do is I don't want to have to write different event handlers for each one of these. So instead, I'm going to put an event handler, make a general event handler, okay, and I'm going to put it on the controls, okay. So I'm getting my controls, and I'm getting my output, I'm getting references to my elements in the DOM, okay. So I want to make my target generic, okay. How do I do that? Okay, so I have a general function that takes an event. I let the target equals the event target, so I want to be able to use that easily. I'm going to use a function to get the attribute value. Okay, now, of course, I need to understand my HTML. Okay, look here. Here is input. Oh, I'm using an input of type button. I'm not using a button element. Those are two different things. Oh, it's got an attribute value. Oh, so I can get the attribute. Got it, got it. The value is also all those words that appear in the button. Got it, got it. Okay. We're going to get the attribute. So this would be like the words. Okay. Then I do a check. If the value equals clear, oh, clear gets special behavior. Clear says, oh, I'm going to empty out the outputs in their HTML, else I'm going to take the inner HTML plus equals. What does that do? Oh, it's just going to take this string here and make it bigger. It's going to take the value that I got from the target, a string, add it, and put a space too within it. Oh, that was the behavior we were seeing here. Okay, code, Cedric, DOM events, cool. You can see this thing keeps changing every time we do that. I hit clear. Oh, that was the special behavior of the clear button. Okay, code, web, HTTP. Okay, DOM events. Okay, so this is why bubbling is useful. Okay, we were able to handle a lot of different events, okay, and make this nice and generic. Code isn't too complicated. Little bit dependent. We need to understand our HTML, but That goes without saying because the HTML is generating the events and the DOM. Okay, so this is an example of a general pattern called event delegation. Mess around with it a little bit. Okay, it's a nifty thing. Okay, all right, DOM events. We're going to do a lot with them.